I'm gonna do some preventative maintenance on my clutch hub for a symptom known as the coffee grinder noise or clutch chatter. Uh, from what I understand, what happens is the oil sits in here, and when you fire up the bike and you first engage the clutch, the cold oil uh, gets between the clutch plates or something like that, and it causes some chatter, causes some noise. So the solution, or one of the remedies for that, is to drill some small 1/16 inch holes in the grooves along all the way around in a spiral pattern so that they don't line up. So what I did is I measured the length of these grooves, and they're about 39 millimeters. So, and there's 30 grooves all the way around. So I went 4.5 millimeters from either end, which left me with 30 millimeters to make my spiral. And then I just made marks a millimeter longer at a time all the way around. I just used a razor blade at the end of my caliper and just marked it off. So I got a nice spiral that goes all the way around. Now I'm just gonna go in the middle of each groove on those marks I made with a punch, and then drill those out, and then hopefully that'll prevent any coffee grinder noise. I'm just gonna use my punch and make some punch marks in these grooves. And I'll keep doing that all the way around. Okay, so I got all my punch marks in there. They go all the way around in the spiral. And I have my 16th inch bit chucked up. So I'm just gonna start drilling these holes. Just like that. It's aluminum, so it's nice and soft, and it doesn't take much at all. It's pretty thin right here. And I'll just keep doing that all the way around. So I finished drilling all those holes in there. You should be able to kind of see them going around in a spiral. And I'm just gonna take this razor blade and clean them up a little bit on the inside where there's some burrs from drilling through. So I'll just scrape those burrs off, and then this should be good, and hopefully I don't experience the coffee grinder problem that I've heard so much about on the forums. So I'm still waiting on some parts to put the bottom end of the engine together, but I have my valve seals so I can start putting the heads back together. So to do that, I'm going to stick some valve seals on the valve guides and then start installing these valves and springs, and then I can do the HLAs and rocker arms, and then these heads will be ready to put back into the, or installed on the engine when the bottom end's done, and hopefully those other parts show up soon. So I'm going to start putting these valve seals on. Just gonna lube up the guide, I think, a little bit beforehand so these slip on easier, and then I think I might just be able to press these guys on by hand. We'll see how stiff these are. Yeah, I think that worked. I think they'll slip on pretty easy, so stick the rest of these on there. So I got all those valve seals on there. Now I'm going to do the front cylinder, and I know this is the front head, I should say, because it has this breather pipe. On the rear head it's plugged off. So this is the front one, and I have my front right exhaust valve, which goes right here. And before I slide that in there, I'm just going to coat the valve stem with a little bit of moly grease. And slide that into its guide. Makes a nice fit with the new seal. And then I'll use my valve spring compressor and put these springs on. Okay, before I put my springs in, I need to put these valve seats in. And they act as wear plates between the springs and the aluminum head. So just slide those guys into place. Tip this up for a second. So drop in there, and then install my springs. Now when I'm installing this bigger one, I want the narrow pitch end, or the closed end, towards the bottom on the seat. So you'll notice that the spring's a little tighter here. That part goes down. That in there. This guy. Valve spring compressor on there. And get these slip keepers in place. Okay, now I have my valve spring compressed using this little tool. So in this opening here, I'm going to drop these little slit keepers onto the valve stem, and they're tapered, so the taper end goes down, and then there's a little groove in those that matches up with a groove in the valve stem. I'm going to try and show this a little better, some light. So I have both the slit keepers sitting in there right now, and I'm just going to unscrew the valve spring compressor, and then those should just kind of pop into place while that valve spring retainer moves up. You can see valve springs in place, the keepers are nice and tight in there, everything looks good. I'll do that with the other three, and then I'll put the rest of the stuff in. Before I put the HLAs and rocker arms in the head, I'm gonna make sure that my valve lapping job was good enough and that these valves are sealing well. So I put the spark plugs in temporarily, and I'm gonna dump a little kerosene right in here and see if it leaks. If it doesn't leak, I'll call it good enough and use it as is. Okay, so I filled that up nearly flush, and I'll just let that sit and make sure it doesn't leak. While I'm waiting for that, I'll put together the other head in the same way. Alright, I got both cylinder heads, valves put together, sitting in the kerosene bath, so as long as those don't leak, I can start putting the rest of it together, so I'll let those sit for a while.